Welcome to another edition of Saints Rewind on the Radio Verulam's local football show. We're delighted to have another guest with us, and we have got Steve Oliver, who played for St Albans City mainly in the 80s, and we'll come on to that very, very shortly. So the Saints Rewind we're going to look at this week is the 1985-86 season. We've also got Dave Taverner with us again to make sure he keeps us on the straight and narrow, and he gives us all the correct statistics. So welcome to Dave and Steve. And Steve, first and foremost, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, Graham. Thank you. It's a delight to be with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Keeping well?
Yeah, not bad at all, Graham. Hello, Ollie. Good to see you.
Yeah, and you, Dave. Yeah, long time.
It certainly is.
Fantastic. So we've done a few Saints Rewinds over the last couple of months. Hopefully you're enjoying them. And obviously we can just reflect and spend time going back in time and speaking to key people such as Steve. So what we're going to do tonight, as always, we're going to ask Steve for his 3 memorable moments of that 1985-86 season. And then Dave's also going to share his 3 memorable moments of that 1985-86 season. So let's get cracking. Steve, over to you. First and foremost, what's your 3rd memorable moment of that 85-86 season playing for the Saints?
Well, I'm going to take you back to December 1985, and it's a friendly, believe it or not. It's a friendly, well, it's a game marked to mark Paul Mayles' testimonial, I guess. Paul Mayles was a fantastic forward for the Saints, started in the 70s and played well to, the season before, 84-85. Made something like over 355 I think it was, appearances to be exact, and scored loads of goals, scored 118 goals. And when I first joined the Saints, he was, this was 2 seasons before, he was putting the ball in the back of the net for fun, something like 35 goals in 47 games, absolutely tremendous. And he was great. And that night it was a real opportunity to say thank you for Paul for all he'd done for the club. And we played Watford. They came along with a bit of a star-studded team. Although he didn't play, John Barnes was there and came into the changing room and presented Paul with a bit of a gift and so on. And the team, they had Tony Cotton and Steve Sherwood. I think they each played a half. The goalkeepers, they had Kenny Jackets, Nigel Callaghan, who was a bit of a local lad as well, Wilf Rostron, Nigel Gibbs, so some good players. And although we lost 3-1, I can't remember much of the game. I was actually subbed, to be quite honest, came on for the second half. But Gary Porter, who was he was an under-21 international, I don't know whether people remember him. He scored a couple. Roger Wade scored an own goal for them as well. And then second half, I think Gary Keane, he pulled one back for us. But it was great to see Paul Mayles play. He was all elbows, really difficult to play against. Great speed, great upper body strength. He was, I think he did building work, I think,
right,
at the time. So really strong guy.
And I read there as well, Steve. I read there that that season where he scored about 35, 36 goals, as you say, you scored 14 goals, and I know Dave will probably touch on it at some point. And you were overshadowed by him and a couple of others, which is amazing. But I also like your connection to the goalkeepers at Watford. You know, Steve Sherwood and Tony Cotton, they were great goalkeepers, weren't they? So, you know, to be up against them stars, including John Barnes as well, that must have been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was a great time. And, you know, Paul was a real sort of honest lad. He broke my nose in training once, but I'll never hold that against him. He was a lovely lad and a great player. He got loads of penalties. He was the sort of player that would push the ball past the defender, run and then kick the defender and go down and get a penalty. Brilliant.
Good old 80s football. So, Steve, thanks for sharing your first memorable experience of that 85-86 season. Dave, over to you. What stood out as the 3rd memorable moment?
Well, on the Malesy thing, nobody won penalties like he did, and the biggest beneficiary, as you'll remember, Ollie, was Ian Whitehead. Phenomenal.
Well, that was slightly before my time. It was John Watt in my day, but I think he took the penalties. But yeah, I can remember Ian Whitehead. He scored loads of penalties, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, my first one is just a quick look back at your career, Ollie, to fill people in. we were relegated at the end of the 82-83 season, and John Mitchell was the joint manager with John Butterfield, and they turned to local players for the 83-84 season to get the club back up. And Steve Oliver was one of them, playing for Sandridge Rovers, enjoying a lot of success at the time as well in Sunday League for teams like Fleas and Queen's Head. But bringing in these local players, that was a risk, but my goodness, it paid off. 2 promotions in 3 years. Ollie, as you mentioned earlier, Graham, 7 years with us, 253 games, 37 goals from midfield. That's a pretty good return, isn't it? And only 1 booking, which is obviously a referee had an aberration that night. Those 2 promotions, towards the end of April 1984, Steve got the winning goal at Epping Town, but won us the promotion then, which was terrific to have a rebuilt side, and he got promoted. 2 years later, we got promoted again. I think Ollie's going to come on to this game later. Away to Lewis, we won 7-1, and he scored in that game as well. So it's 2 very notable goals there. But after he finished with that, it's one very interesting stat. He was a great first to have. He was the first City substitute to come on and score a hat-trick. It's a Mickey Mouse Cup tie, but we don't need telling.
It was, I remember it.
Ampthill Town, wasn't it, Ollie?
And I was actually injured.
Yeah,
come on.
How many would you have got with both legs then? Anyway, after he left us, he moved north, Congleton Town, Kidsgrove Athletic and Middlewich. And in the 92-93 season, while we were being runners-up in the Ishmael League, Ollie was winning Player of the Year with Congleton.
Wonderful. And Dave, what stood out for me when I looked at the statistics with Steve? He didn't get a red card as a midfielder. How did you not get a red card with all them games? It's
never tackled anyone.
Never tackled anyone. So, Steve, back to you then. Your second memorable moment of that 85-86 season.
Well, people will remember this one. It was like the Battle of Clarence Park. So I'm going to January 1986, and Wembley were top of the league. We were somewhere just behind them, I think. We'd already played them at their place and lost 3-0 in a fairly physical game, and this one got even more physical. There was a really bad foul on Mark Pearson early on in the game that sort of set the tone for the game. Percy was our goalkeeper, and it was a tough game. Not a lot in it, but very physical. And then in the 78th minute, there was a bit of a fracas, huge melee of fighting going on as Ian Dowie went down on the ground, and their keeper came out and kicked him in the jaw. Lots of fists flying and so on. And in the end, in total that day, 5 players sent off.
Wow.
Gary Simpson and Bob Dowie for us, 2 defenders, and 3 of their players. And we pushed after that to try and get the equaliser. They'd scored, I think, second half or just before half time, can't remember. But anyway, they ended up winning 1-0. But it's probably the most discontented game I've ever played in, roughest game. And to be fair, I think Wembley were the better side on the day. They were more physical and probably had better of the game, really. But it left us 3 points behind, even though we'd played 1 game more. And of course, you only got 2 points in those days for a win. So the lead was significant. And of course, Ian Dowie, he was diagnosed with a broken jaw and went to hospital and was out for probably a couple of months, something like that.
That's not good. Thanks
ruined his good looks, Ollie.
Sorry, say it again.
It ruined Ian Dowie's good looks, didn't it?
You can tell him that, not me.
Right. And that's that time, isn't it?
Sorry, Graham. You mentioned Gary Simpson went off. Of course, that was his debut. We'd just signed him from Stevenage 2 days earlier.
I've forgotten that, yeah.
The Wembley goalkeeper was Fred Smart. He was the one that started all the trouble, of course. The substitute, Bobby Hutchinson, he was one that went off, and Adrian Smith. It was a first half goal, and it actually took them 5 points clear of us, but we timed our run to perfection at the end of the season.
You see, Steve, you never get past Dave and his statistics, do you? You have that memory, and he's always got the correct ones, rightly so. So, Dave, over to you then. What's your second memorable moment of that 85-86 season?
Well, it was actually the start of the season. The previous season, we've been promoted. So the previous season was our first season back in Division 1. and we topped the table for most of the first half season, fell off badly after Christmas. But 85-86, we were expected to make a strong charge. It all went wrong the first few weeks before a ball had been kicked in anger in the league. We went out of the Herts Charity Cup, went out of the FA Trophy, went out of the FA Cup. And everyone's thinking, this is going wrong, badly wrong. Started off a league campaign, away to Tilbury, a 0-0 draw. Oh, that's a bit more stable. But then we just suddenly hit form, didn't we, Ollie? We got 4 goals against Leytonstone Ilford, who were one of the highly fancied side. 3 more against Basildon United with an Ian Dowie hat-trick. 6 against Leatherhead. I don't think you played in that game, actually. 6 against Leatherhead. Steve Perrin got a hat-trick. And we were flying then. It went up and down after that. We had our high points, our low points. And I remember an article by Keith Perry in the end of the season after we won promotion. He wrote for the Herts Advertiser then before he went off for a long and distinguished career with the Daily Telegraph. And his headline was "A Weird Route to Promotion." And it was. We just went up and down all the time. And then the game you're going to come on to later at Lewis, where we won promotion, it was a weird route indeed. But what a season after that. Bad start. Momentum just took us through.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. And finally then, Steve, over to your first memorable moment of the 85-86 season.
Yeah, this has got to be mine in terms of came to the last Saturday of the season. We were playing away at Lewis. Lewis had been a bit of a thorn in our side, even though they were sort of mid-table side, really. We'd drawn 3 each at Clarence Park, and I think it was sort of about October time. And then the following month went to their place and lost in the league, or AC Delco Cup, whatever it was called. Lost 2-1. So we go off to Lewis, and I can remember being in the coach with the players, and there was a bit more quietness than normal. People were obviously sort of reflecting on the game, getting psyched up for the game. And as we neared the stadium, Bob Dowie stood up and recited some classic poetry. I can't remember what it was, but he went on for verse after verse, and it was all stirring stuff. And I think that put us in the mood. And so we get out on the pitch, and fairly early on, Steve Perrin's put us 1 up straight away, recognising we've got to win this to be guaranteed a promotion, not necessarily as champions, because we were behind Wembley, who'd finished their games, they played their last game, and we were also on equal points, but behind in goal difference from Bromley. And so our thoughts, I think, generally were not on winning the championship, but actually just getting enough to get promoted. So we got off to a great start, and then shortly after, Steve Perrin scored. I popped one in with my left foot, and it actually flew in, which is not very usual for me. So a bit of a collector's item. And Steve Perrin was on fire that day, ex-Palace player, and he put in, I think it was 4 by half time. We were 5-1 up at half time and coasting. Second half, we carried on, got another couple of goals. Gary Keane got one, and again, I think I put a left-footed crossover for Martin Gurney to score. So we ended up winning 7-1, and Bromley had finished their game half an hour before us, and news came that they'd won, but only 2-1. So that meant we were not only promoted, but champions, with a better goal difference of some four goals, I think it was. Great jubilation. The fans were brilliant. I can remember having a bit of a hug on the pitch with Sid Wells, our fixtures secretary. Yeah, it was a brilliant day. Great day.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear, Steve. That's a great story. And finally, Dave, over to yourself. That your final and third memorable moment of that 85-86 season.
Well, that game there, we just talked about, we were 4 up in 16 minutes. It was incredible. And the side Mitch put out, he went for height rather than a normal team, because he felt that's the way Lewis were going to play and cancel them out. And Pete Lawrence, who was attached to the side, then he thought it's the wrong side, but everything went right for us. Anyway, yes. Well, I'm going to go back actually 2 years from then. I know we're not talking about the season I'm going to look at, but 83-84, mid-December, we went top of the table with a win at Leighton Wingate. Then the next night, we had a friendly against Tottenham Hotspur. And it was part of reacclimatising Ozzy Ardiles to English football after the Falklands War. And we had a crowd of, I think it's about 1,300 odd down there. Spurs won 5-3. Ozzy Ardiles was in the side, Tony Galvin, Gary Brooke, Ian Culverhouse, Tony Parks in goal, and Alan Cochrane, who went on to play for us, probably the most gifted City player I've ever seen. And the scorer of the first City goal, Steve Oliver. Talk us through it, Ollie.
I remember it well. I remember somebody played the ball through and approaching Gary Parks. I like to think it was a bit sort of Thierry Henry-esque in terms of I stroked the ball in, just passed the ball into the net and wrong-footed him. And it was great moment. I can still hear the roar of the crowd. It must have been about a couple of thousand there, I think, at the time. Great feeling for me being a Spurs fan. And I think Ardiles he'd broken his leg, hadn't he? I think the previous season. So I think this was also part of his rehabilitation.
Wonderful story.
Did you get to tackle him at all, Ollie?
Oh, I never got near him. No, never got near him.
So you played in a tough era, and we alluded to the fighting where there was 5 substitutions. You had to be a real hard crunching player, didn't you? You had to get stuck in the 70s and 80s and 90s to a point. What's your thoughts these days on the modern footballer to the footballer back in the 80s?
I do struggle to enjoy some games. I get so frustrated with some of the refereeing decisions about soft fouls, players going over with just, you lay a hand on a player's shoulder and he'll go down. I do fear for the game that actually it will turn a lot of people away from the game, and it's certainly not the game I played. But the technical ability of players today is absolutely fantastic. You can see their touch is so good, and they're so fit and so much stronger. I think physically stronger. It's still a great game, but I had moments of very great frustration.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I guess you've been watching the Euros. So just very quickly, who are you tipping to win that one?
We'd like to say Italy or Belgium, I think. So the next game will be really key about out of those two who wins that one. Can I see England winning? They're in the right half of the draw, aren't they? So you can always dream, but I can't see it personally.
Yeah, fantastic. And Dave, just on the Euros, who are you tipping to win it?
I'm not watching it, Graham.
Yeah, you know.
Well, England. I see the highlights, and England are just so boring. It would be bad for football if they actually won it. They need to open up and play proper, expansive football. I'd like to see Belgium win it. Hopefully they will, but who knows?
Top 3 for me at the beginning was France, Belgium and Sweden. I was looking at Sweden as the underdog, and they've started okay. So we'll see how that one develops. But listen, Steve, absolute pleasure meeting and having you on the show, on Radio Verulam's Local Football Show. We'd love to have you back again at some point. And Dave, as always, thank you for your time. And we look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks, Graham. Cheers, Ollie.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Graham. Thanks, Dave.